everybody, to another amazing day at fmtraining.tv. My name is Margaret. I'll be your broadcast engineer for today. Welcome. Hope you all are having a good day. So, today we're going to talk about the fantastic FileMaker platform. So, we are talking about basically beginners for FileMaker for beginners. Let me rephrase that correctly. Last Friday, we did a overview of what script triggers were and the types of script triggers. Today, I'll be talking more with Calvin about the script triggers topic. They're a big topic in FileMaker, and they can get complicated. So for Tuesday, we have script parameters. Wednesday, we have conditional formatting. Thursday, we have POs adding modules. It's pretty common for people to take a layout or a module out of another database they like, especially with our database from the starting point, and drop it into something they like. It's kind of a discussion how you would go about doing that. Friday is going to be duplicate records, removing duplicate records and hiding unneeded sections. That happens a lot. You'll have people have multiple records when things, especially if you have a way to input information from the web. That is very common with us, for example, for our emailing lists. And then Monday will be an open Q&A, but it also might have a specific topic depending what Richard is feeling like. So, Calvin, what are we doing today?
Not yesterday, Friday.
Yes,
We looked at script triggers. I trust everybody had a good weekend yesterday and the day before and did not do FileMaker or did something equally fun. Or if you were doing FileMaker, you were having fun with FileMaker. But on Friday, we talked about script triggers. And so now we're opening up that, continuing the conversation about script triggers. We're going to be talking about implementation. So last Friday, we were talking about what is a script trigger? What are the script triggers? When can you implement, or when does a script trigger fire? What order do they fire in? Today, we're looking more at how do we use script triggers. And I'm excited about, so we're going to start by looking at FM starting point and see some of the different ways that script triggers are being used there. And maybe we will make some adjustments there and mess around with it. And then maybe some people have some ideas, other ways we can use script triggers. Maybe we'll try something new. So here I am in FM starting point. And here is our home layout. So let's go ahead and take a look first at how to identify if there are any script triggers. So I'll go to the layout mode. And one thing you'll notice here in the lower right of the screen is the script with this, what is it, like a bang or something. What would you call that? A star? A script and a star, maybe? But this is a script trigger or a script and a gear. It's not a trigger, but that's what it is. That's what it's telling us. It's saying that there's a script trigger here. And actually, if you hover over it, you can see what script trigger it is. How many script triggers? There's one. And which script trigger was the first one? The first one's an on-record load trigger, and it's running script 0213 home layout load. So this is a well-defined script trigger. Let's go and check that out. Check that out in the script workspace. What was the number on there? I'm going to hover over this one more time.
213, I think. Yeah.
213. So I'll just type in 0213, and there it is. So that was an easy way to find it. And let's see what the script does. So this is an on-record load trigger. And one thing FM starting point doesn't quite do, but you'll see it says layout load. I actually like to put the trigger name right in there. So I would say on layout load. So I can just do a search for on layout load, see all the on layout load triggers, or all the ones that are specifically for on layout load. So here we see our script settings, allow user abort off, set error capture on, and then some notes about this. If the window file name and the window name match, what is it? If it isn't in there, then it exits. And then it hides the menu bar and hides the toolbar. Now, the menu bar you can't actually hide or show in FileMaker on Mac, but you can on FileMaker Go on iOS, and you can on Windows. And then we can show or hide the toolbar. So what this is doing we go to, I'll show the toolbar once again, go to browse mode. And as soon as the layout loaded, you'll see that it hid that tool, the toolbar. Let's do that one more time. So we'll go into layout mode, and then we'll go to browse mode, and the layout load right there is what's triggering that toolbar to hide. So that's a nice way to hide the toolbar whenever the record is loading. I'm sorry, it's not layout load, it's record load.
We have a quick
So this is
question.
actually mislabeled in here. It says layout load when it should be record. Yes, what's the question?
Why would you want to hide the toolbar?
Why would you want to hide the toolbar? Good question. So a lot of apps that I work on, a lot of them, I don't actually want my users to see the FileMaker toolbar because it may or may not give them options that we don't want them to have, or it may just cause confusion with some of the options that shouldn't be available. So you see, one of these is grayed out. Depending on what your menus are. So we don't have any other custom menus here. But if your toolbar if you have a custom menu that doesn't allow them to create or delete records, then the create and delete buttons don't disappear. They just get grayed out, like the show all button is grayed out. And so I don't want them to see a new record or delete record. If you right click on here, you can say customize toolbar, and anyone can do this. There's no restriction on this. So they can put in export, and maybe their privilege set doesn't allow them to export. So they would put the button on there and then it'd be grayed out, and it just cause more confusion. So sometimes you want to give them your own toolbar. You limit their actions because of restrictions. As a developer, I like to see the toolbar and I use it all the time. But for users, sometimes I want to hide it. Another reason to hide the toolbar. In the case for FM starting point, the reason why we're hiding the toolbar is because this is not a data. It's a table, but it's not a table that has lots of records in it. It doesn't actually have multiple records. It's supposed to have one record. You'll see that it currently has one. And actually, if you create multiple records, and we'll look here, I just created 8. If I close the app, and if I open that up again, it's actually going to give me an error message and say multiple records exist, because it's designed only to have that one preference record. So we only wanted, so in this case, it has to do with the way that the app works with that one preference record. So we're not really interacting with the table. It's more for system settings. And that's why we don't need the toolbar in this case. Good question. Any follow-up questions?
Nope,
I'm
not
going to
at the
delete
moment.
these extra records. Well, let's move on. So that I was just showing that one because that's the first one we run into here. Let's go to manage. Where is it? It's under file options. Okay. And then we have script triggers, the last option over here. And here we have a number of different options. We have on first window open, on last window close, and these are being used. On window open, anytime a new window is open. On window close, anytime a window is closed. On file AV player change, anytime you're interacting with the AV player. And on window transaction. So currently we're using 2 of these, the on first window open and on last window close. And these 2 features actually predate script triggers. It used to be just a setting in the file options, maybe even on the first page. And then when script triggers were introduced, eventually they moved over here. So let's go ahead and look at what these 2 scripts do. We've got one called startup and one called close. That's pretty well labeled. So let's look at start. Now the startup in FM starting point does quite a lot. It does tracking, it sets up the calendar. Sometimes you'll have a startup script that loads a bunch of records. If you are planning on interacting with a lot of records, every time you open it, maybe you'll load all the records for that session. So the startup time takes a long time, but as soon as you open up that table of contacts, it's it's already loaded in the cache, so it loads faster and you don't notice that lag. At that point, you can put the lag at the beginning. And we do a little of that here with navigating to invoices and contacts. Here at the end, it decides which, based on our platform, what device we are on, it will navigate us to different layouts. So a lot of different actions that we can choose in that on first window open trigger that figures out where the user is and where they should go. Let's look at close. And here you'll notice that it just goes to the opening window and then closes up shop. And it's also referencing an external file called FM Gallery if you have it, which in this case I don't have it, so that would just be closing that file as well. One thing that I usually put in my scripts for on first window open and on last window close is a log. So it would create a log record to say it was opened by this person at this time, and then it was closed by this person at this time. And we demo those in my audit log, in our audit log demo file. But so some different options, ideas of what you would do in a startup and close script. Does anybody use the startup and close script for anything else besides navigating to the right window or several different windows and logging records, loading records, and logging interactions? Any other ideas there for using the startup and close?
Might take people a bit to get back to because of the delay.
Okay.
So if anyone says anything, I will let you know.
Okay. So we looked at where that is in the how the script triggers are set up in the file options for the entire file. Let's go back to the layout and see what other things that we're doing in the layout script triggers. Let's see what other things we're doing in the layout script triggers here. So the first one that we looked at was the home, and that was an on record load, and that had to do with hiding the toolbar. Let's go over here and look at the contacts data entry. This one is going to be, actually, should be an assets data entry, which may be, is this not, or accounts data entry? Let's go ahead and look at this one. So if I double click on this, it's going to open up the layout setup, not actually the layout. And here we just have the simple on layout enter trigger. We have it's well defined here. 0, 200. So let's go ahead and look at that in the scripts. We'll see 0, 200. And here, what are we doing here? So here it's refreshing some objects on the layout, setting up a back to global variable for navigating back to the layout after something's done. Set variable to edit. Okay, so we did some different things here. And the status area changed. That's what I was thinking here. So one thing, most of these on layout enter triggers. So you'll notice we have a whole folder of them. Let's just look at this. So we'll look at accounts and then contacts. They both run the status area change script 100. Let's go ahead and look at what that is. And what this is doing, it is showing the menu bar. We want to show it, and it's showing the toolbar. So in FM starting point, by default, the toolbar is only hidden on the home layout. Everywhere else, when you navigate, it brings that toolbar up. But say you wanted to use your own toolbar, you wanted to hide this one, you could just say hide. And as soon as you change it here, all those on layout enter triggers are referencing the same script, so now it's hidden everywhere. Quick way to make a change across the board everywhere if you want to not use the toolbar. I'm going to go ahead and put that back to show because for the demonstration I'll want it. So that's another way that we are using an on layout enter trigger for accounts. Now I want to jump down to another one. So this is all about window setup, how we want the window to look. Another one that I want to look at over here is invoices. Did they remove all of the QuickBooks stuff from here?
They might have.
Oh, that would be sad if
Wait,
that
no,
happened.
is that standard? It might be only in enhanced. Hold on, give me a second.
Can you send me the enhanced one?
Yeah, give me a momento.
So one thing that I wanted to show that's really interesting about the enhanced version is, so here we have the same similar trigger. It's running invoices, data entry load. If we look at this one, what number was it? 203, I think. Look at 203 in here, 203. Then again, it's just doing the status area change. But sometimes you'll have multiple layouts to view data in the same table. So maybe you have a project that has two different layouts. And why would you have two different layouts? Well, sometimes I have a couple different clients that do the same thing, where they have projects and they want all the projects to be in one table. But then they have different kinds of projects. They have project type A, type B, type C, and they want to have different layouts to view those different projects. So in this case, we use an on-record load trigger to check if the layout that we're viewing the project matches the data for that project. So as soon as the record loads, it will check the data in the record and say, is it type A, type B, type C? And then it will switch layouts to jump over to the corresponding layout. And in FM starting point, we have a similar feature where instead of different types of projects, we're checking to see what kind of whether we're using QuickBooks or not. And if we are using QuickBooks, we give them the layout with the QuickBooks options. If they're not using QuickBooks, then we switch them to the standard layout. But maybe that was a past version of FM starting point.
I did send you enhanced.
You sent me that link? Okay.
Yes. So also there is a belated answer to the startup script question.
Yes.
They use their startup script to initialize global variables and fields.
Yes, and FM starting point does that as well. Yep, good point there. So let me see if this has the other options in here as well. I believe it does. Yeah, it does. Okay, so good. So let's go ahead and this startup script, or this trigger script, is going to look a little different. Let's hover over here, see what our trigger is. 203, I guess it's the same number as the other one. And here, so here is it with device mode. So we're checking to see if this is the mouse layout or not. And if it is, then we check to see if we're using QuickBooks. If we are using QuickBooks, we jump over to the QuickBooks data entry layout. Let's go ahead and do that here. And so right now you'll see we're not using QuickBooks. And this case is the layout load. Usually when I use something like this to switch between layouts, it's on the record load, depending on, but you can do something just like that here. Let's jump over to preferences, or the preferences in the QuickBooks. And I'm going to say that we are using QuickBooks. And now when I jump back over to invoices, let's watch what happens with the script trigger. And we'll just, so here's the regular go to invoices script. And as soon as we say go to invoices, and now you'll notice this layout 800A, it goes to layout 800A. We can see that right here. But now it's running the data entry load, that on layout load trigger. And it does everything here. Or it did the layout and data entry load. And did this mess up the It's not checking to see which layout we should be on.
You gonna do some live bug fixing?
Yeah, something. This is 2 for 2. So it should be doing, maybe we should fix this while we're sitting here. So on the on layout, I thought we just looked at this. Didn't we just look at a trigger where it was saying, where it checked to see if the invoices data entry load, or was it the navigation that it checked? Or did I switch back between layouts or between apps? Oh, that's what happened. Okay. I've got 2 copies of FM starting point. That's what's messing me up here. So let's go ahead and make sure we're in the right one. So this one with the E on it, that's the one I want. I'm going to close everything else. So here, now let's try the script trigger once again. I'm going to jump over to invoices. And here it goes to the layout. And now we're having that on layout enter trigger, and it's going to check to see if we are using QuickBooks. So let's go ahead and look at our toolbar. It's not letting me show the toolbar at the moment. So it's going to go to the invoices table, and then it's running the script again because this invoices has the same trigger on it. And then it goes through the status area change, shows the status area, and finishes up the script. There we go. So this one is checking to see what which layout it should be using and switching between the data entry layouts based on the file settings, but you could do it based on the record type or based on the user. Sometimes one user might have a more limited access. So another user might have a more, maybe an admin level access. So the limited user has fewer fields, less data. The more advanced user has more data to see. And you can have that switch based on the privilege set. So a lot of different options with these script triggers and how they can be used. Do we have any questions at this point before we switch to another example of script triggers in FM starting point?
No, not currently. So you are good to keep going about other use cases.
Okay, great. So another use case in FM starting point that I'd like to look at is in the search. So let's go to the account and we'll look at the pop-up window here. So what we've talked about so far were the file script triggers and the layout script triggers. And now we're going to start looking at object script triggers. So here we have an object. Now we can see that there's a layout script trigger here. Hover over this, we'll see it's the keystroke script trigger. And if we hover over here, we can see this one is on object modify script trigger. So interestingly, we've got 2 script triggers on this layout, or on this one on the layout, one on this object, and both of them are kind of a keystroke level. Whenever you type, both of them are going to go off. So let's go ahead and see what happens. So and we don't have a lot of data here. Let me see something real quick. If we can just create some data real fast. If you haven't ever done this, this is kind of a cool feature in FM starting point. If you just want to generate mock data, now don't do it this many. We want to do just a few of these things, maybe 10 records. Contacts per account, we'll change that to between 0 and 3, maybe. Notes 0 to 2. 0 to 2. 0 to 1. 0 to 2. Or we'll say 1 to 2. Quantity per product, that's fine. Cost range per product. Number of words per note. Dates for creation, we'll just say today. Number of days to pay invoices, that's good. Number of days. So I just changed all these to make them less, the numbers lower. We'll say generate records. This should just take a minute. And so what this is doing is actually talking to an API that generates random data. So you'll see it's randomuser.me and picksum.photos. Well, that's where the data is coming from. And it's using this API to gather that data, fake data, so we can do a search. We can't really do a search when there's no data in there. And this is faster than finding a spreadsheet and importing it. Okay, mock data generation complete. Let's go ahead and close this. And now when we go to contacts or accounts, there's all of our data. So good. Let's go ahead and back to that search pop-up. And now we can search for something. I'm going to hide my toolbar. And as I type in here, we'll type, it starts filtering and limits the number of records that we're seeing here. So that's pretty cool. And that's accomplished through script triggers. Now let's go ahead and look at this. So if I open up the script debugger and type in, so we just cleared out our search, and I type in a letter. Now you'll notice the letter isn't in there, and we have an on-layout keystroke trigger. So the keystroke happens before the action. So I typed the letter A. The script runs before the letter A is inserted. So it checks to see if that was an escape key, which it wasn't. So that's the end of that. Now it puts the letter in, and now it runs the onObject modify trigger. So that runs after the letter is inserted in there. So knowing the order of these is really helpful. So it does a quick find, and then it sorts the records. So we have our nice little, our nice sub-summary, which is a little obnoxious with this short list, but if you have a long list, it's really handy. And then it navigates back to that search field. And that's happening every time I type. Every time I type a letter, it does both of those. Now, a good thing to note here is, an interesting thing to note, is that when you're doing when you're debugging with the script debugger, you have the option to disable. Now, this escape key. Every time I'm typing, this is a little frustrating having an on-layout keystroke trigger. Anytime I'm debugging anything and typing in here, it's going to go off. So one option that the script debugger has is right here, which is good to know with script triggers, disable script triggers. Now, this doesn't disable it for the whole file, but it disables it while you are testing. So we'll run through that one, but it's disabled. So now when I type, you'll notice it didn't do anything. And even when I press return, it doesn't do anything. And that's because the script triggers are disabled. As soon as I close the script debugger, then it works again. So it's just while the script debugger is open, and it is only while the script debugger is open. And you'll see now it's enabled again. So a little interesting feature there. Now, one thing you'll notice with this, and this is sometimes we come into an issue where we're saying which script trigger is the best one to use. And here we're using an on layout keystroke, on object modify. Now you'll notice if you've got a really large data set, this one is only 10 or 11 records. But if you have something with 100, 1,000, several thousand, you will find that having an on object modify for a search is not, it's going to have a lot of lag. And when you type one letter, you probably aren't going to get your search results. So one thing that I do with my projects that I'm working on, and if we're using FM Starting Point that has this already set up, one thing I'll change with the script trigger is I will update the, in this case, I'll change the on object modify to on object save. So let's just go 05. So it's called search as you type. And I'll disable it here. So in this case, what it will do is now it ran the script trigger on layout keystroke, but it didn't do the on object modify because I disabled that. Now it doesn't perform the search until I hit return. And then when I hit return, it's exiting the field because I have that set in the field settings to exit, to advance to the next object when I hit return. And in this case, it performed the search and the script navigates me back to the field. So I'm right where I started. And it performs that search. Now this feels a lot faster because it was on, I didn't search until I actually put in what my search criteria was. Now sometimes it is good to have it on object modify, so every time you type a letter in, it makes a change. But especially if you're doing something like maybe a state, it will pop up, or if you have the auto completion enabled, to see something like that can be helpful. But sometimes on object modify is better. It just depends on your scenario. Let's see what other options we have in here as far as in the script triggers. Now, one of my favorite features that I use sometimes with script triggers that I remember in FileMaker 9, before we had script triggers, I had this feature where they said, we don't want to have, now as awesome as I built a search where you could say, let's find something else. I built a search where you could assign a staff and do a search and type somebody's name in and select them. And they said, okay, that's great, but that's not what we want. We want an autocomplete that sets the ID for the person. And we don't want to have to just have this search, this pop-up window, all this other stuff. And I just remember trying over and over to get this thing to work, for them to be able to type the name in and it save the ID and assign it without having to use, without having the script trigger available. And what was even more frustrating about that was when FileMaker 10 came out, they decided to take 3 years to upgrade. So I knew we had script triggers, I just wasn't allowed to use them on that one given spot. So if we would like, I can take a moment to show you one of my favorite implementations for script triggers and data entry. Do we have any questions before we jump into something like that?
No, David Angel's mentioned something about the edit box having autocomplete. So
yeah, so let's go ahead and try that out. So in this case, what I'm going to do is move this staff field and see if we let's just revert the layout. So what I'm going to do is try this once more time. And let's give this a border. And we're going to give this, we're going to let us view this, or we're going to make it editable in browse mode. So let's go ahead and see. Is it not visible? Take the hiding feature off. And I'm just not sure why I'm not seeing it. There it is. So here we have a field here. And it's called staff. And we can just type somebody's name in here. We can type John. Well, that's great, except that didn't actually relate that person to the related record for John. We don't have any IDs. And let me go ahead and, we can't assign it. I just type in John here. It doesn't actually assign it to him. So, and it didn't even, it's letting me type in something that's wrong. So John with a lot of N's. So how can we fix this? Let's give it a drop-down list. So I'm going to give it a drop-down list. I'm going to see if there's already a staff name in here. Oh, so there already is a staff full name. So I'm going to use staff full name. And I'm going to enable autocomplete. So here, now I can start typing in John. Okay, and it's going to give me that. And, oh, but we don't have, it's not assigning the ID. So let's go ahead and we'll make an adjustment here. So we're going to need one new relationship here. And what I'll do is just add this new one and put on it W. Call this one staff. And instead of ID staff, we're going to say staff name. If anyone has any questions, you can interrupt me at any point. And we'll just open this up. And I think it's called name full. So we want this to be the same field that we're referencing in our value list. And here we're going to say staff name. We'll change that. Okay, and I'll save that. So now this is where we grab the script trigger. So I'm going to say start script trigger, and this is going to be on object save. And I'm going to create a new script, and this is going to be called find staff ID. And it's going to say, so it's going to look through that relationship and say set variable. And we're just going to call this one ID staff. And now we're going to say we want to look through that relationship. So if we remember, it was 12W. And I want to find the ID staff primary key. That's this one. Say OK, save that. And then we are going to say set field. And then we'll say ID staff. And the calculated results, where it is going to be ID staff from that I already set. Now this is pretty simple. And I'll say, okay. ID staff. Okay. So let's go ahead and, so we'll see right here that it's not assigned to anybody. I'll go ahead and select John Smith. Now that script trigger, it ran pretty fast. You'll notice that it automatically assigned it to him. And if I select this arrow, it takes me to John. Let's go back over to invoices and try that again with somebody else. I grab Catherine. Now I jump over and it navigates me to Catherine because the ID is saved in the background. Let's go ahead and look at this with the script trigger. So I start typing. You see the auto completes. And here we see that it's set in. It sets the variable through that relationship based on the name, saves the ID which would trigger a relookup for the name and give me that record there. Now let's try something else. If I clear this out and let's go ahead and just type somewhere else. I'm just going to type John Smith to show how this is actually running that relookup. And I paste this in. Now you'll notice that I don't have any capitalization here, but as soon as I hit enter, or tab, the capitalization went in because it runs a relookup on that field and it's looking up to the staff area. Now this search, if we want to search for John and grab him, that's pretty fast. But if you have people on data entry that would rather be typing, they'll find something like this to be much faster. And you can also do some other options in here and maybe have, maybe you can test to see if that person belongs on that invoice or on that project. Are they qualified to be on that project based on the category? So if we look at John, let's go back to invoices, open up John's record, and we'll see that John is the president. Is anyone else president? Only John is president. So John, maybe he really shouldn't be assigned to invoices. And so we'll say if, actually, let's put it up here. T12W, the category equals president. Show custom dialog. Message. Get someone else to deal with this. With an exclamation point. Don't bother the president. And now we'll say set field. And I want to go back to that staff, or we want to go back to the invoice, which, what number is invoices? Is it 13, 12? T12, staff name, and we want to clear that. And we'll say go to field. I'll specify the field as staff. Or once again, right table, 12, staff name. And then we'll say exit script, and I'm going to say false, which that will make sure that we stay in. If we end with a false, then that will keep us in that field instead of navigating us to the next field. So let's go ahead and clear this. And we'll say John Smith. Oh, it didn't do it for us. So what happened here? Maybe I looked at the wrong, maybe it should be title. Let's try that again. Say John. Let's look at what this field is. President. It is title. Oh, if title equals president, that should work now. So let's go ahead and go to John. Here, get someone else to deal with this. It's not for John Smith. We can do a check like that. We can do other checks if the person doesn't exist. Maybe it won't let them put anything in there. So if is empty ID staff, we will do the same thing here. So I'm just going to duplicate this, but we're going to change our message where we're going to say this staff could not be found. A little more polite on this one. So let's put in John Smith, because we don't know how to spell his name. We'll tab, this staff could not be found. It clears everything, and I just navigate somewhere else. And we're back to our field to type in a valid name. So this is one of my favorite ways to use script triggers, but script triggers, there's an infinite different deployments. Do we have any questions or comments or other ideas or a favorite way that you use script triggers?
Kind of some comments on Discord. The biggest limitation of autocomplete is that it only suggests items that start with the characters you type, not items that include what you type. So you have to know what characters the item starts with. Example, won't type company if you type comp. Someone's like, sometimes I relate it to itself to get it to autofill. Huh.
So relate it to itself to autofill?
Yeah.
So the problem, so you could do the thing with like a lookup where so one of the things that that was a requirement for, or that I would prefer in FM starting point, all of the names, like the staff name and invoices, is a lookup pointing to staff. So when you type that in, it's you're typing into a lookup field. The data that you enter is then overwritten by the lookup once the ID is set. So you could update that ID to be a lookup field based on the staff name, but that's really not a way that I would want to have the data structured. And you end up in this kind of loop where the name trigger then is, if you have them both set up as lookups, then you have the name triggering the ID triggering the name, and it just doesn't work. It's not consistent, or at least it wasn't last time I tried it, which has been a while since we have script triggers. Good comment though.
Centauri said that this script trigger is exactly what I was looking for. I don't know quite which one you're referring to, Centauri.
This is my favorite one.
Which one's your favorite? This one? Oh, this one?
Oh, this one, the autocomplete. Get someone else to do this. And it will work without the without the autocomplete. Autocomplete doesn't work on WebDirect, and also on-object modify and on-object keystroke I don't think work on WebDirect either. So the good things to keep in mind when you're working on these items. But the on-object save does. But you can type this in. You don't necessarily have to have this drop-down list. And what's nice about that is that if your data, your list of records is too long, then you can just have it, you can type whatever you want in and it will work. But it's what helps with having the autocomplete, though, helps you type in the right thing, as opposed to a search where for that relationship to work, the names have to match exactly. And that's what the autocomplete helps us with. For a search, for example, if we select the assigned staff and type in John, it doesn't have to be exact, and you can type in Smith, and he still comes up, and we can select him. But if I type in Smith here, and I think somebody mentioned this, it won't work. Now, what if you wanted to do first name, and last name, first name? So it would be a way to do this, and so to give you more options for what you can type. And so let's go ahead and just try that out. Do we have enough time? We got time. We're going to work fast. Okay. So let's go ahead and we'll jump over to staff, and I'm going to create a new field, and it's going to be called, so we got name first, name full, name last. I'm going to call this one name list. And we'll say it's a calculation. I'm going to say create. And I'm going to make sure we're starting in staff. I'm going to say list and name first, name last, name full, and list name. Actually, and we'll just do name last, name first. We're substituting this, and we're replacing with a comma. Okay, so let's just look at what this looks like. So here, because I'm using monkey bread, I get to check out what this is going to look like. So anytime any one of these fields are typed in, this is going to work. So let's go ahead and say okay. And I'll say okay. Now let's go back over to invoices. And I have to change a couple things. First, I need to change in the relationship so this relationship is just for the sake of searching. It doesn't have to, we can assign it to the name list, say okay. Now the other thing I want to change here is I'm going to duplicate this and say, instead of staff name, I'll say staff name list, specify, change it to the list, say okay, browse mode. Now look at this list of all these things that I have. Now, if I select John, it's going to tell me to get somebody else to do this. Let's try this a different one. How about Karen? Now it's going to, if there's multiple Karens, it's going to grab the first Karen in the list. But the cool thing about this is that I can start typing, and I can use either one of those, and it matches her. If I start typing the last name pops up. And you'll notice that I typed in last name, first name, and I selected last name, first name, but because it's a lookup, it switched to first name, last name, so all my data is going to be consistent. And you can put any data in there. So I've got another instance where we use a license number. And sometimes it's easier to just copy and paste a license number for somebody into this field. That license number, which is unique for each of the people that you're searching on, automatically inserts that person's name, so they don't have to type it in and make sure they spell it right. But this option here, now we've got a longer list, more options for what we can type in, and it assigns those people based on the selected name. So this makes it a little more flexible in what you are able to type to find the right person.
Which is a nifty way of helping that issue. So,
any questions or comments or other ideas how to use script triggers that people like?
I saw something like that with a pop-up containing a portal. Inside a portal is a pattern count with list.
A pattern. Yeah, you could do something like that. I don't, for a search, that would work. And I think we have something like that for this add line. Oh, I guess we took off. This used to have a portal that you searched on. It was a pattern count, and based on one of those index fields. Yeah, that works too. Any other comments, questions?
People are typing, so let them type a little bit.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure you covered it, but I missed the start of the stream. Cleaning data on entry, question mark.
Oh, so you can do that with a script trigger. Make sure and test to make sure something is it is the data that you want. But usually I'll do that in the auto enter calculations. So if we look at something like, let's just look at a field here that I can type into. So this one, bill to first name. So if I make this bold, will it stay? Yeah. So bill to name first. Here, what I like to do is just put that right into the calculation here. It's going to run faster than a script trigger, though you could do a script trigger to do the same thing. So I'll say like something like text format remove and then self, and you can copy and paste this into any field and it'll work. So I'll say, okay, now to get this to work, you have to have do not replace existing value of field, if any, unchecked, or else it'll say, oh, there's a value there, I'm not going to change it. So the key is having that changed. So now when I type in Herman and type in another N and tab, that auto enter calculation will remove all of that formatting for me, and any other formatting that we want to, in this case, I'm just saying text format remove, but you could have other options in there as well, title case, etc.
Okay, I think it's the last of the questions for today, for the most part. So, David, do you have Discord open, or should I copy this to you? I should probably copy this to you.
Can pop open Discord.
Well, we're just kind of discussing commons anyway at the moment, David. It's an example of what he's talking about, the pattern count list.
So I think that would be for like filtering on a portal. And you might need a script trigger to refresh the portal. Yeah, I was thinking we had that, but an older version of FM Starting Point did use that. This one doesn't anymore.
In that case, I think I'll let everybody go. It's been a Monday.
Okay, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, no,
and
thank
it was
you
a lot
so
of fun
much,
talking
Calvin.
about script triggers and their implementations.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. Everyone have a lovely day. We will catch you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Got a report of an individual up here who may be a FileMaker license. Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir!